Sheku, thank you so much for joining us. You have so many fans around the world, and from musicians to people who don't necessarily follow classical music, such a wide range of listener appreciates you and all you do for classical music, all you do for cello playing, and we're just so grateful to have you with us today, and we'll not take up too much of your time.
That's okay.
First of all, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, I'm just, fine, and just
good. You've been doing a lot of playing recently.
A lot of practicing, not so much performing, but that's still nice, and I'm enjoying playing and stuff.
Excellent, good. Okay, so we're going to get straight stuck into it. My first question to you is, do you feel you have built up any kind of general philosophy, either for your physical playing, so your physical relationship to music, and then the second part of that question is the same for the mind, your thoughts or mentality before a concert, or mentality generally with your instrument?
I would say before a concert, I don't really have a sort of routine, and I kind of never have done. And I suppose the less of a routine I have, then the less that can go wrong, I suppose. So I kind of have the approach where, as long as I eat a bit before and warm up, of course, but even that, I don't have a very strict routine before concerts, because I know that it can be so different wherever you find yourself, and it's never going to be 100% ideal. So I guess my approach is a very kind of relaxed and chill one. And if you see me before a concert, I'm generally come across as very relaxed and chilled, and that's just how I try to be as much as I can. I try to talk to people instead of being on my own, and that kind of focus. And then, of course, maybe a minute before I go on stage, I try to get into the focus, but I don't like to be there for too long on my own. That's just my thinking.
That's a beautiful way to be. I think lots of people would not only be inspired by that, but wish they could be like that. Not everyone is able. And what about, so you're speaking on both physical and mental there, but in terms of more generally, so not necessarily just before a concert, but more generally your like psychological approach to playing, would you say it's quite similar to that, or do you have anything else that you can share with us there?
I would say my approach to playing, I don't know, it's quite certainly when I'm practicing and thinking about music, it's quite an intense one, in the sense that I can get very, very, very focused and intensely thinking about what I'm doing when I'm playing, both emotionally and also about the mechanics of what I'm doing, certainly when I'm practicing. And it's quite I find, therefore, that I have this kind of maybe few hours of really, really intense focus of practicing, and then I'll come and I'll have a break and do something quite different. And I can really feel the difference between when I'm focused on my music and my playing, and when I'm just not, and to try and not so much blur those lines together. Of course, when I'm going for a walk and things like that, tunes will be going in my head and I'll be thinking about music and stuff, but I do try to not have that intense way of thinking about it when I'm not choosing to, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. The contrast is so important, because I mean, not just for your general life well-being and health, but also for the betterment of your playing. So much happens when you're able to free and to let go. So yes, I can relate to that very much. So my next question for you is, what is your relationship to technique? Maybe you could talk a little bit about your study path with your teachers, how much do you approach technique as something in isolation? Just any words you have on that?
Yeah, I suppose I feel lucky that when I started playing, I feel that a lot of things, technically, particularly with my bowing, was set up really well and really nicely, such that I never felt that I had to change the path or course in which I was going in terms of my technique. It was more just exploring new ideas and building on what I already had in my development. And so I was very grateful to have had a good kind of setup and ways of thinking about playing from when I was young. And so now I would say that all of the technical thinking is generally in aid of finding ways of achieving what I want to achieve, I guess, musically and things like that. So it's, but I think, yeah, I think because I've been able to have, I was set up very, very well with my first two teachers, which I'm very, very grateful for now, I would say.
Yeah, that's the ideal place for all of us to get to, is where you're not crisis managing or managing problems through technical work, but it's just taking a bass and trying to achieve something great or achieve something that you want to say. Which is,
of course, it's not to say that I don't, spend a lot of time, thinking about new ways of vibrato and bowing and things like that, but it's always building on the principles that I have, I would say, is how I feel at the moment, which is good.
Could you possibly take us through some of what those principles are, even in the most, like, imagine it's a 5-year-old listening to what you're saying, and I mean things just they could be super basic, like you sit like blah, or the hand position is generally like blah. And certainly if you were set up like that, I'm sure many of them are so second nature and you don't analyze it, but I wonder if there's maybe one or two things.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think more recently I've been thinking a lot more about vibrato. I would say that's the most recent development in my playing. And I was watching videos of me when I was younger, and I would say the range of vibrato possibilities, I think, have other thing that have changed a lot in my playing recently. And I've been thinking about, I guess, when I was younger, I would think mainly about speed and width, but not so much about depth of the left hand and the vibrato, and the overtones that you can get from having a much deeper left hand and a much shallower one as well, is something that I've been thinking about a lot. And I suppose technically using the weight of my left hand and varying that, I found interesting. And even when you're not doing vibrato, there's this kind of in between thing where it's, I guess technically you could call it non-vib, but there's always a kind of fluidity in the left hand between the notes, the differing of weights, which is kind of like the action of vibrato, but not actually oscillating. And that's something that I've been kind of practicing and thinking about a lot recently.
I think that's so interesting, because I try to speak with students a lot about the changing from one note to another, the motion of vibrato, the motion of shifting. All of these things have a connection. They have an innate connection, and they're linked physically, but also their purpose is linked. So hearing you talk about the connection between notes, it's somewhere between a vibrato and a non-vibrato, and to explore technical areas that don't fit into these absolute categories, I think, is where so much of the excitement happens.
Exactly. And with that also, one can think about the different types of shifts. And so I'm a big fan of slides in general as a thing, and the vocal connection between notes, but also having the infinite possibilities of connecting an interval, is something that I really, really enjoy. I'm fascinated about, and that's something that I think a lot about when I'm practicing, I would say, at the moment.
Mm. Okay, so my next question, second last question, is: do you have something that you would say challenges you the most, you struggle with the most, both physically and psychologically?
Challenges me the most, I would say, are like super fast things. I don't know. I don't really. I don't know. Maybe it's also because I don't really love virtuosic music. I don't love listening to that as much.
The same.
so therefore, I don't have the kind of motivation to also work on those things. But I mean, I do admire, of course, the fearlessness that comes with virtuosic playing, and that's something that I want to maybe achieve more. But yeah, I would say that fast playing is not my it's not my favorite thing, and therefore it's not my strong point as much.
I would just like to disagree and say that although your slow playing is of a phenomenal level, so is your fast playing. So let's just, I don't want on record that I agree with you saying that your fast playing was less good, because it's not true.
I mean, yeah, maybe it's just how comfortable I feel.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's an internal thing.
Yeah.
And what about with any kind of thoughts or positivity or concerns or things? Do you ever have anything that you think, oh, that's unhelpful to think that? Or, I mean, you talked a bit about your process of being able to let go once you leave the practice room and kind of, but yeah, is there anything that you feel challenges you more in that area?
I think there's always, and this comes, I was watching videos, someone sent me a video of me playing a trio when I was probably like 9 or 10 or something like this. And
see that.
Course, yeah, well, I will send, I'll try and find it and send it. But what's interesting is, of course, there are lots of, I don't know, developments that I have made and lots of problems that I would be able to find in this video in terms of my playing if I were to look at it. But what's really nice is it has this childlike feeling that I love and try to. It's almost like, yeah, when I come to work on a piece, I start with this childlike feeling and then I go into this more, I don't know, mature and investigative way of thinking about it. And then ultimately I want to come back to this childlike feeling at the end. So it's kind of a circular motion. And I think that, I guess, yeah, one of the challenges is to come back to that with a more mature feeling. It's a weird, I don't know how to.
That makes complete sense. The way I think of, I guess, a similar concept is when you first come to something, you conceive of it as a whole thing. So you kind of like a child has such strong instincts and intuition. They just know certain things. You then like develop through life, and as much as we learn things, we also absorb so much that's destructive and that complicates things, and I think can deaden our instinct, which is powerful and often right. And and you actually, as musicians, we're often trying to get back to that whole state, that wholesome state.
Yeah, and also I find that's why it's also nice to play to younger people and to people who also haven't spent loads of time thinking and studying music necessarily, just playing to people who enjoy listening, and just sometimes they will pick up on something that you would never have thought about, and it's really, really wonderful. I have this when I was younger, I used to play a lot to my youngest sister, who's now learning the cello, and she was listening to a recording of me playing, and she said to me, she said, no, she didn't know it was me playing, and it was two phrases, and she said, Sheku, but I don't really like this playing because they played both of those phrases the same. And I said, it's true, and and I was maybe thinking so much about other things in those two phrases that I hadn't thought about the basic thing of making two phrases differently. And she, having not studied music for very long and thought about it, just picked up on a very, very simple but wonderful thing, and that's something that I do try to come back to after having this intense way of thinking about my playing.
Absolutely. I love that story. That's very cute. So just to finish off, speaking of young people, you just brought us right to the last question, which is just, do you, and you don't have to, but do you have any sort of parting words of advice, either for young people that are curiously listening to playing as your sister was, or for those who are studying music, and you can either address like beginners or conservatoire students or adult learners, or you can just give like a general bit of advice?
My I suppose my general bit of advice would always be to listen to as much music as possible, and these days it's very possible to listen to such a range of music. We have such a great access to so many amazing recordings and styles of music, and we can watch lots of videos of these things. And I think to make the most of that would be my piece of advice, because there's so many wonderful things out there, and I enjoy. I spend many hours. I can get into a hole of listening to many recordings and watching videos, and staying up to very late at night, just being fascinated about something. And this is something that I think is really enjoyable, and can be so inspiring. And so I would encourage that as much as possible.
Sheku, thank you so much. I have learned a lot in the last and it's just wonderful for you to give up the time and to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining me.
That's okay. Thank you so much.